men have three hearts. One heart is the one that the world gets to see. The second heart is the one that only friends and family get to see. And the third heart, no one gets to see.
Wow. Today, I have Mr. Justin with the Dominance Academy, and we're going to dive deep into a conversation that will be supportive of men everywhere. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Dominique, for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I'm deeply passionate about supporting men, and I've learned a lot about men from my mentors and clients. It's an ongoing process, but there are still things that I don't understand because I'm not living the life experience of a man. I can share my experiences of being in relationships with men and things that I've grown to understand. And I can share what women desire from men or what will help women open up and be more passionate with men. But I don't have your lived experience. So I'm really excited to learn more from your perspective and for you to share some of the awarenesses and the things that you've learned and grown to understand as you've even taken not just being the man, but also leading and guiding men in the world.
No doubt. When you said that, have you ever seen the show Shogun? It was recreated, I think it aired last year.
The child, I watched that.
Yeah, there was a movie like in the 70s that was produced off of the novel, and then he redid it in 2024, and it's fantastic, really close to the book. One of the like main characters, he was just saying something very important about men. And he said, men have three hearts. One heart is the one that the world gets to see. The second heart is the one that only friends and family get to see. And the third heart, no one gets to see.
Wow.
And from your perspective, there's going to be an aspect that you will never get to see or understand or even hear about. I don't know if that's a detriment or not of having that heart that no one gets to see. I do think it's important to protect that aspect of the self. But yeah, that just popped into my head when you were talking about like the experiences of a woman on the outside trying to understand what we go through as men.
Yes. I also had different experiences and being a nurse for decades and taking care of men. And one of the things that I would commonly see there is how it was such a more negative impact on men's psyche of being hospitalized. And what I learned and discerned from this was as children, little girls play with dolls and we imagine that someday we're going to have a baby. So we already have an idea that someday we may be in the hospital for something, right? So it's something in our mindset of thinking, but men often will think, oh, that's never going to be. I'm never going to have to be in the hospital. They've never even imagined themselves having those experiences. And so I would see a lot more resistance. It really seemed to have a deeper impact on their spirit. It was much more depressing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say that as boys, we don't grow up in a world that is supportive of us because we're the ones who create the thing that supports others. That's the path of man. That's the world that we have. Everything around you, from social developments to physical objects to systems to this computer to everything that we enjoy in life, by and large, was created by men in an effort to support other life. And women enjoyed the benefits of being within that and being protected and nurtured and saying that, hey, we'll make an environment so that you can make babies, so that you can thrive and so on and help create families. So as boys, we don't look at it as I've got a support system. It's if I want something to rely on, I have myself, I have my skills, I have my knowledge, I have my body, I've got maybe some friends in there or my network, but it's not, hey, how are you doing? It's never anything like that because it's all about, are you reliable? Are you capable? Are you proficient? And when life takes turns and starts denting those things that make you reliable, proficient, and capable, then it's, wait a second, what am I here for? What can I do? How? Because so much of the identity of man is about having those things and being able to provide this sort of experience for those around us. So when we can't do that, there's this loss of who am I? What do I do? And you see this a lot with guys who retire, who spent 40 years in the factory or as a police officer or something like that. And now they're a civilian and they're like, I don't even know how to identify with anything anymore because my identity was wrapped up in so much of what I was doing for the world. And this is just a reality that women will never really understand, I don't think. And just having the entire world that you and your ancestors have built and as a support system, it chips out your spirit. And I think that's why you were seeing that when you were caring for men who were injured or sick or what have you.
Because they're not with their identity. I remember that I was working at USC in the cardiothoracic ICU. And at the time I was like modeling and doing other things as a creative outlet. But I wasn't talking about that during my shift. One of my patients that was in ICU was a award-winning movie writer. He would turn books into like stories and movies. I can't think of the name for it right now, but he had won Oscars or big awards. He was severely depressed. Like I could just check out of living just to get me out of here. Super depressed. And I was telling him, I said, yeah, the hospital, especially for a creative like yourself too. So he was a very creative person. You being in such a sterile environment with all these machines and not really seeing nature or any windows and getting the sunlight, it's just a stark contrast to like creativity and creation. It can be really depressing. And the one thing that he said to me, he goes, yeah, and I'm really curious why you're here because he could sense that I was more of a creative soul. I've been guiding and working with men as patients and in different settings since I was 19 and now I'm 56, but I really enjoy hearing your perspective because from a female perspective too, it can be that we can have appreciation for the things that men have created, but then there can also be challenges like so many companies created by men, but women, our cycles and our energetic cycles and things like that are so different that it can be challenging for us to operate in a world that is designed by men, usually for men.
Yes, it's not conducive to the female nature.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that poses a whole host of challenges. And it's tough because these things are not so easily solved by just passing laws because we're dealing with the nature of our beings and laws can't change that, right? So no amount of laws are going to make it what happens to you, say physiologically and emotionally as a female, just because a law is in place that supports whatever happens off of that won't change what's actually happening within you. Sure, maybe we can do what we can, but it's not going to change the paradigm. And what popped in my head was we were talking about like the identity thing. That's something that I touch on a lot in the work that I do. And because a lot of guys will go through their entire lives not having any sort of semblance of their real identity and understanding their masculine core. And so what often happens is the identity is attached to what has been done in life, right? It's a doing. It's the identity is a sense of doing rather than a sense of being, right? And so what happens is a lot of times like guys will have certain life experiences. And in my world, it's centered around relationships, dating and marriage and divorce and all that good stuff. There's a time when usually something terrible happens, a bad breakup, maybe a miscarriage for a child that was desired, a divorce, something like that, or maybe a spouse has died. And this trauma has brought them to a point where they say, what am I doing? I feel like either the wool has been pulled over my eyes and now I'm seeing for the first time and I'm angry or I'm sad. In the manosphere spaces, they call this red pill rage, where they live this existence where they're said, okay, be like this, do these things, be this kind of way, and everything's going to be fine. Then they find out that no, actually, women are just as treacherous as men can be, right? That they can be just as deceptive, they can be just as abusive, and they're not sugar and spice everything nice the way a lot of men have been programmed that women are, right? And
Right.
so they come out and they'll, fuck, what is this reality that I'm in, right? And they start questioning who they are. They start wondering what's going on, and usually they start seeking help, right? And we were talking about that before we clicked on the cameras. And it usually comes at a point when they've reached acceptance, where they're saying, okay, there's a lot of things here that I can't change. I'm really unhappy with the state of how I am and how my life has been. I need to do something about this. They have to be at a very low place, usually. Because I've worked with guys who had all the money in the world and they would like to do this, but emotionally, they're not at the place where they're saying, I need to do something about my life. I need to do something with how I relate to myself. And when they're at that stage, that's when they can work with me in earnest. Most of my time, like I would say 2/3 of the time that I spend with my guys is spent on working with their identity, like working with their assumed identity and then looking at that, like holding that up to the light to see if it's opaque or not. And if it's transparent, it's like, wait, let's break this down. Let's start digging into things. And maybe you've got some false beliefs about yourself, which has created a whole domino effect of behaviors and perceptions. And that's really not you. Then we just start working on those sort of things. We get rid of the stuff that's not working. We keep the things that are. Then we can start adding tools to sort out, okay, who are you? And I provide certain exercises and homework and things of that nature so that they can start discovering these things on their own.
One thing I do want to add is that this rage happens for both men and women because women, we're told a set of things of if you always are the Mr. Nice Guy, the people pleasing. If you're a good boy and if you do this and you do that, then this is going to happen in your life. And when you find out that you have been sold a lie and been programmed also domesticated as children into like falling for the trappings of success. I need to have the degree, the wife, the kids, the house, the car, blah, 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 and I'm going to be happy. But that is us expecting to have inner happiness based on external experiences and external things that we've accumulated. But it's not an outside in job, it's an inside out job. When we can work and have emotional intelligence, deprogram ourselves from these limiting beliefs that we've taken on and be our full authentic selves, and we shift our inner world, that's reflected in our outer world. But what happens is the rage within women too is after so many years of playing this game and then you realize that you get played. That's not what you thought it was going to be. You're not going to have Prince Charming and live happily ever after. We're both experiencing this. And I think this is where midlife crisis comes up. We get into this reality of, wait, something is just not quite right here. And when I work with clients too, it's then going back into the inner child, your source, your true authentic self, and remembering we are human beings, not human doings, but we've been conditioned, sent to school, given these ideas and the values that we should have so that we behave the right way. All these things are poured into us to really break our spirit and for who we are so we can be good little workers and help government and other systems thrive so that we can play
Sure.
to their machine.
Yeah. It's a great way to make money. I don't think that it's a breaking of spirit. I think it's just a disconnection. I think it's just making sure that connection doesn't happen or it stays feeble. And because the spirit, I don't think can be broken up. I don't think it can be disturbed from things of the outside world, but you can just make a disconnection from it. And so it's like, as long as you keep people disconnected from your core, from your feminine core, from a man's masculine core, like really understanding like who you are, beyond or before Dominique, right? Before Justin, right? There's far less ability to be controlled once in that space because from there, the certain things get washed away. Say, like a man who's connected to his masculine core, he shops less because he has stillness. So this is the sort of stuff that I help my guys. Like one of my dudes is really coming into this because he's doing a lot of shadow work and he's learning about Jungian shadow integration. So through that acceptance of himself without judgment, now his inner turmoil, his inner anxiety, the fragmented active energy that's been inside him is now settling down and it's starting to simmer and eventually it's going to call out completely. And once you're in that place, your needs and desires shift, right? And so the effects of the outside world of what women say that they want of you, of what the government says what they want of you, of what society says or culture says of what they want of you, that doesn't really get in. And you're no longer affected or manipulated by these things, right?
Yeah, you can be your most authentic self into yourself.
And when I tell my guys, it's not until you've come to this place of stillness where you're not pushing or pulling, right? That's actually the only point when you can actually love a woman. Because before that, you've got a lot of pushing and pulling. You've got judgments, you've got perceptions, you've got nice guy syndrome, there's neediness, there's shame, there's guilt, there's attachments. And what you think is connection, what you think is love is not actually love. It's you doing these things as a cope in order to get certain things from the woman, right? Using her as a drug. And I think women do similar things. And so it's not until you get to that place of stillness where you can actually give without thinking that you're losing something, right? Because once they're still, your cup is always full, right? Because it's full of self. You're not using outside things to keep your cup full constantly. It's always full. So I give a bunch of love, it just gets filled right back up. There's no depletion. I'm not fearing of like loss. And before you get to this point, it feels like guys have this finite amount, like a bank account of caring, right? Of love or whatever. And it's, I can only shave off a little bit for this girl. She better take care of it because if she abuses it or uses it or runs away, I'm going to feel at a loss. And now guys are like, I don't want to gamble with that. And they're all stepping back. And then what do they say? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. That's like a common manosphere term, right? And that comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of fear of loss. Right. fear of pain. And it's if you have full on respect for yourself, full on love for yourself, your cup is full. It's like spilling out. What is there to lose? You can't lose anything.
That's why working with self love is so important because you resource yourself and you're not seeking the other person or someone else to make you feel loved. And if we approach
Right.
relationships or anything we're wanting to do from a place of scarcity and fear, then we're actually putting like a negative charge of energy towards it. And it's actually a repelling there.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we fear losing something, but we're actually pushing it away with that energy and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a grasping. You're familiar with Alan Watts?
Yes, love his
Yes. Yeah. He's one of my favorites. And he was telling this story in one of his recordings of this little girl, and she went with her mom to the pet store and got a baby kitten. And she was so excited and so happy to have this kitten that on the way home, she squeezed it to death with love. And so that's to say that this is what people do. They strangle the person that's in their life that they're supposedly loving with their attachments, and they're grasping at the person and making sure that and nothing can drip out of their fingers, just constantly in this state of protection and fear. And the thing is that when you get to the point that I'm talking about with that stillness, and you start with acceptance of self and things of that nature, you then can hold women in the palm of your hand. There's no grasping at them, right? It's, I want you to be here. You can be here. But I'm not trying to hold you here. From that position, then you can actually give. You can actually give to her, right? Without this fear of, oh, geez, that's 20% out of my bank account of caring, my bank account of giving a shit about her. It's a long ordeal. It really is. I think that you look on social media with the fast-paced, short-term media types, and if I just look like this and do this and get this, then I'll be the guy, right? And that's not how you be the guy. It's purely a mental game.
It's also an energetic game. We have to remember we're human beings, not human doings. So being the guy is not always action. It's actually being it. Because doing to make things happen is you're doing the guy. It's totally a different thing. So it's just who you be and who you are. And then that is going to attract your energy, your like your vibe attracts your tribe. You're going to actually attract things to you. And also, you got to think too, even with manifesting, a lot of times the analogy that I'll give is if you're trying to grasp water, you're trying to grab it, it just runs right through your fingertips. But if you just hold a safe space and you can hold and cup your hands and you allow it to, you can hold it, then you can have more. And
Yeah,
also, you create safety because others can feel when you're coming from fear, and then no one likes to be controlled. And so, if you give them the freedom and that safety where they feel like, okay, you're a safe space to be with, then I'm going to relax. But if you approach giving love to someone, especially if men are approaching women, and you're really the undercurrent is, I'm afraid I'm about to lose something. What if they do this? So whenever you're approaching it and underneath, you're feeling fear in your nervous system. Women are very intuitive. We can sense the fear, even though your
oh,
emotions of something else. Women are highly intuitive. Even if we can't mentally put a finger on it, our nervous systems can feel something's off within your nervous system and it will not feel safe. So then you can think, oh, I loved them and gave them love and look, they ran away. But if you gave it and it was the wrapping of it was of all with your energy of nervousness, fear, anxiety, scarcity, you weren't really giving like an authentic love because
sure.
real love is about, okay, I can give love without fear, high intentions, low attachment. But I know that anything that is for me is not going to miss me. And if it's not you, if you're not supposed to be my forever person and it doesn't work, then something better will come my way and I'm just going to trust.
Here's my perspective on one of the differences with men and women is that I think if you were to examine like an idealized man, okay, he's not in need of love. And the key word is need.
The neediness,
He's not in
neediness.
need of love. Exactly. A child is in need of love, a male child, right? He's seeking that acceptance. He's seeking reassurance. He's seeking the care and the recognition and the holding in many ways that holding can show up. Okay. This is not for men with a capital M, right? My woman loves me. I'm assuming that she does, but it doesn't do anything for me. What does things for me is her following me because that's her putting her belief in me. And that is more important. So I tell my guys, don't seek love from women, seek their respect because people who love each other, they screw each other over constantly. family members,
Right.
long-term friends, lovers, husbands and wives, things like that. But you never fuck over somebody that you respect. And you may not even like the person that you respect, but you respect them and you're like, you know what? You take them seriously. And like I hear a lot of guys talking about wanting to be loved, and all I hear is their inner child. I hear their inner child looking for that, trying to find the thing that mom gave them or didn't give them that they missed. And it's imperative that guys learn to cut the metaphorical umbilical cord. And some dudes who are fully grown, 40s, 50s, 60s, they still haven't cut it. And they're still looking to women as this surrogate mother figure from an archetypal, energetic place. Okay. A grown man, that is manhood. It's saying, I don't need mom anymore. I am standing on my own in the world and I can face it. And so it's not absolutely necessary for men with a capital M to be seeking love from a woman. She may give it to him, but it doesn't really do much because he has filled his cup. Right? What she gives is extra. It's like the foam on top of the hot chocolate, right? So that if it goes for whatever reason, a death or the end of a relationship or divorce or something like that, it doesn't deplete him, right? Because he's not using her for that, right? She's not supplying the contents of his cup, right? Really, what it is that the man is to become the vessel. This is where guys get all fucked up. And this is how women get fucked up with them hoping for the Prince Charming, but never becoming Prince. Because there's a lot of guys who are absolutely not the Prince Charming. They're not the vessel for her liquid. Remember, we're talking about the water?
Mhm.
Women are like the water, they fill the vessel. And in my experience, the more vulnerable she is, the more open minded she is, the more in touch with her feminine core. Remember, we were talking about the severing of spirit and so on. The more liquid she can be. And so takes the shape of his vessel, provided that inspires trust, it inspires her safety within her vulnerability and so on. And this is really it's like a test of the man's character. It's a test of his competence that he's not going to let her fall apart, that his vessel is not made out of paper mache, right? And then it just looks like it's made out of metal, but it's not. It's just spray painted silver. It's really paper mache. And there's a lot of guys who are like this, right?
They want to have leadership in the relationship, but if you don't have leadership qualities, you can't
Right.
fake it till you make it and be like, "Just because I say so, I'm gonna be the leader of this thing."
Can
That doesn't
assume.
feel safe. I don't trust your guidance because you don't
Yes.
even trust your guidance. Like, it's all about somatics in the body, nervous system regulation as well.
Yeah.
We're embodying the energetic of being in our healthy masculine and a healthy feminine. All of those things are key. And the analogy of the cup is something that I share with both men and women because first you want to pour and resource yourself with love, not looking for the other to make you feel loved. Have that and feel whole and complete. And anything else is a bonus. So
Mhm.
the bonus, if that goes away, you're not losing everything because you're still fully resourced. It's a
Mhm.
nice to have. It's enjoyable to have love from someone that you love and it feels good, but it doesn't define you or you're not having fear of losing it because you
Sure.
are yourself. You are your longest lasting relationship from your first breath to your last.
Of course.
I want to tie something in here that I see a lot because I like what you said about not needing the woman to be the mother for them. But what has happened is so many of us in society, one of the things when I became a trauma informed master coach is over 95% of adults received inadequate parenting. So we're looking and choosing partners in our subconscious mind to help us to heal that wound. So someone will usually pick a partner that triggers the thing that we did that upset us about our parents because we're really trying to find some healing about that. And that's how we have such dysfunction in relationships. But one thing is we can only meet someone's emotions as deeply as we've met our own. Many women for so long living in a world created by men for men in a lot of ways. A lot of women were just supposed to take the supporting role for a man, but they didn't have the opportunity to fully self actualize. You can be my wife, you can be the mother to my children, but never what is really your mission or your purpose on your heart of what do you want to do or grow to? What is really important to you other than being in service to our union, being in service to our home? Right? A lot of things. So we were thinking past generations because it wasn't even until 1972 that women could even open their own checking account. So a lot of women from not very many generations ago, not very long ago, if they want to leave their parents' home, their only option is to get married. They couldn't stand independently on their own for many years, a lot of women couldn't even get college degrees, buy their own homes. And so it was, even if maybe they didn't want to be with a man, it's just what society put this expectation to survive in a world that was created by men for men. So then what happened is these mothers that had these children, they were feeling sad because while they may love their husband and their child, there's still something missing for themselves because they don't have their identity outside of that, of who am I into my full essence. So then what these women will do is numb themselves out. I saw this in my mother and my grandmother through drinking. Or they would go and read books or romance novels after they made dinner and did the obligatory things they needed to do. And then they would go in the bedroom and read the romance novels. And I think just live through the character of what they wish their life would be like. So they're feeling sad and disconnected again, that disconnection. So they love their children, but we can only meet someone's emotions as deeply as we met our own. So if we're not able to feel our full emotions and we're trying to disconnect from our sadness and numb ourselves out, and we're emotionally disconnected, we're not emotionally connecting to our children. And our children don't understand that it's not about us or their lack of love for us. It's just that the mother in these homes was actually going through their own pain as well. So they weren't fully connecting. So then in relationship, we will operate and want someone that will give us the love and attention that we wish our mothers would have given us. And this happens a lot with men too. So they're looking for that. And if their moms could not emotionally connect and be there and make them feel loved, they will not trust women in their subconscious because if my own mother who birthed me couldn't fully be there and fully cheer me on and give me love and make me feel valued, and they were just numbed out, checked out, drinking, tuning out to the world just to survive,
Or working too much.
we're working too much, being workaholics, right?
Mhm.
Then how am I really going to trust the feminine? So a lot of it comes back to having inner child wounds, the mother wound that so many of us have. So it's really breaking down into that.
I think that the turmoil that you're talking about that so many women have experienced, it doesn't come from one or the other, right? Say going after my dreams or supporting my family. What I think it comes from is having a split mind. And whenever you have two minds, that causes anxiety. It causes friction within the self. It means I'm not committing to any one path within myself. So I've seen, just for example, in the place of women, very satisfied women who have chosen, right? And they say, nope, you know what? I am not interested in having a family. I'm not interested in getting married. I'm not interested in having kids. I want to travel the world. I want to create an impact on society. I want to create something, right? And they're fully, like, all the chips are in on this path. I found that produces satisfaction. That reduces anxiety. Instead of looking over the shoulder and going, well, what if I did this? What if I did this? What should I be doing this? All that second guessing and the split mind. Conversely, some of the happiest women ever I've got some friends who are like this, where they have said, away with my entire identity. My identity is my service to my husband and my children. And they literally became the liquid in the vessel. I'm here to serve. And they too, by pushing all the chips in on that, have found great satisfaction. So I think it's not the content of one or the other. I think it's just the act of having a split mind and second guessing. Should I do this? And I want to do a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit, and then being pulled in all these different directions. And that I think causes anxiety. And I see this with all kinds of people. And my mentor, he has this phrase, one thought, one mind, one way. And this is directed towards men because he too works with men. But it's about having this decisive nature of saying, this is how I'm choosing to be. This is in line with who I am. This is what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it. Not being caught up in the mind too much.
One thing I want to add in that is it's in choosing, but that choosing it means you have choice. And so a lot of older generations didn't fully have the choice.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
now if newer generations are saying, this is what I want, and I know I could do this, but I
Mhm.
desire to do this, then you're going for what you desire. Because even back then, with having limited choice, some women, that's what they really enjoy doing. And that's all they really thought about doing. So great. I think there is something with split mind, but we also are multidimensional beings and we can have varied interests. I can be a really great partner and I can be a really great mother And I can also have creative outlets and other things that I want to do for myself. And I think that in society has been a challenge because it's just like women get stuck in, I can only be good at this. If I'm a good mom, then I'm not going to be, this part of me over here can't exist. There's multiple aspects of ourselves and we have different interests.
There's also the problem of the effects of media, social media, cultural developments, and things of that nature that say you should be this or
Yeah.
you're not one of us. Right. And I think that sort of that George Bush Juniorism sort of thing, if you're not with us, you're against us. That is a really dangerous trap, right? So I've got a friend who she decided she wants to be a stay-at-home mom. She wants to be a housewife, old school housewife. And she is berated online because she just puts up stuff that's in support of this sort of lifestyle because she likes it. She has pride in what she does. And she gets destroyed constantly. Not destroyed, but she gets firebombs lobbed at her. But it's just a shame that, or in the vice versa, where someone chooses otherwise, they want to explore the world and do these things, they get firebombed too. I think these sort of things of the pressures of media saying this is what you should do. Something that I've noticed as a man who's in relationship and has had, let's say, a number of relationships with women and a lot of interactions with women on a romantic level, women are very susceptible to influence and not in the same way that men are because your emotions are so easily accessed. It's right there. And so if there's an influence of media or influence of culture, you access emotions. And this is with all psychology manipulations and things of that nature. You access someone's emotions, you can then control their behavior. You can change their perceptions and you can start making them do things that they think they're choosing to do, but they're not actually choosing to do. I've noticed this as a dom. I've noticed this as just a regular man in a relationship. This is actually something that affects men as well, but just on a different level. So actually one of the things that I tell my guys to do right off rip is to cut off exposure to media. Stop watching the news. Stop engaging in social media unless you have a business that's associated with it. So no fun playing around, no doom scrolling, no TikTok, no YouTube, none of this stuff. Stop consuming because we can close our eyes, but we can't close our ears. So sound is a really powerful media source because it goes right into the brain. And from what I've been told, our brains basically record on some level everything that we hear and probably everything that we see. But with the ears is different because we can't shut it off. And so these things go in. And if you have repetitious exposure to a certain type of perspective or belief or whatever, it's going to start affecting your perceptions and your beliefs and therefore your behaviors. So I'm like, listen, guys, you have to cut this off because that's going to prevent you from actually understanding who you are. Because all these other voices are like, no, you're like this, or you should be like this, or I expect you to be like this. And all of these things start compounding and then you don't know what's going on. So you have to like cut it out and start creating some silence around yourself so that you can start having that crucial conversation with yourself and saying, who am I? And that's where it all begins.
Exactly. All begins from the starting point of self. And this is why emotional intelligence and emotional resilience is really important, knowing how to regulate our emotions, knowing how to regulate our nervous systems, because there's always going to be the noise outside or people giving their opinions. But if you truly know who you are and where you're coming from, that it doesn't really matter. You're not going to be as easily influenced. And I also encourage my clients, especially when they're manifesting things and everything, to stop the dooms, be aware of the types of music. If you're listening to music, even the frequency of the sound that could be lowering your vibration. And I will use YouTube and I will listen to things that are inspiring. Like I might be listening to something on by Bob Proctor earlier today. I'll listen to something and I'll tune into that instead of tuning into regular television, tuning into things that support my growth and expansion and being very selective of what we are consuming is important. And then getting into meditative states and taking time meditating during the day, because that's also how you're going to connect into yourself. So that's another deeper way of letting go of the noise and even the overthinking the thoughts that we can be taking on from others and really getting to our center and to ourself.
Sure. Yeah, I have my guys do meditation as well. Just a silent, like breath awareness meditation, first thing when waking up, because the brain isn't fully into the fully awakened state of consciousness. You're still just a little bit sleepy. So the brain's relaxed. And so it's a great time to meditate because you're almost already there and have them do it the first thing. And when they're just getting into it, I say, look, don't engage your phone. Just pick up your phone and say, start a timer for 2 minutes and just start easy with 2 minutes and set it down. And I'll say, you'll be surprised how difficult it is. That 2 minutes will feel like an eternity once your brain starts spinning up and that hamster wheel starts clicking away. And I tell them, listen, all you have to do, your only job, so right at the beginning, is to just recognize that's happened. Just recognize that your awareness has come away from your breathing, is now fixating up here, and just make recognition of that and go, you know what? I'll bring my awareness back to my breathing. And I said, this will happen so many times while you're sitting. It'll happen a dozen times, maybe more while you're meditating. And I said, when you get there, when you're in a meditative state, you'll know that you've been in a meditative state after you've broken out of it. That's the funny thing is that when you're in it, you never recognize that you're in it because then that's not being in it. You only recognize that you've been meditating, not that you are meditating, because there's no awareness of what's happening because you are the happening, right?
You can feel sensations, like for me, energetically within my chakras and my energy centers. I will.
I'm talking about like just the cognitive mental awareness of just saying, oh, I'm aware of what's happening. If you're aware of what's happening, you're not in tune with what's happening. If you're in tune with what's happening, there's no awareness of it because it's happening in the present time. And then you come out of it and you're like, oh, wait a second. Like I lost track of time. I lost track of space. And it could only have been for a few moments, or maybe it was for a few minutes and you're like, wow, oh, okay. And that's what stillness feels like, where there's no awareness of being aware, right? You're in it. And this is the stillness that I'm talking about, like that, to cultivate that within the man, because it's detrimental to being able to form that container, right? That a woman can safely rely on, right? I tell guys, because of what you were saying, like women are very sensitive to reading between the lines, right? And feeling someone out, that just want to be with someone who is similar to her, wants to be opposite, right? Like she looks at him, goes, he's grounded. I can hop into that vibe and feel totally safe. Let's be fair, like women have a lot of mental activity, a lot of emotional activity, but that's nature. You look at nature, the trees are growing all over the place, water is going, the wind is going, rain. It's beautiful in its chaos, right? But if we want something to rest into, it can't be just like that. The guy cannot have the same sort of natural chaos going. He has to be the direct opposite, simple, reliable, and clean in that sense, right? Where she can go, oh, you know what? I can take all this off. I can take off my armor. I can take off my worry. I can take off my self-judgment. I can take off my fear, right? And just rest into that container. And it's a unique experience on the side of the man, right? Where it's like, whoa, this is happening. It's a really interesting sensation of picking up on the idea that someone really trusts you, like with themselves. Like it's a really unique experience. And I don't quite have words to put to it. And maybe on the woman's side of it, of the one who is giving into the trust, I don't think there's words to put to that either. But it's a very powerful and unique experience for sure. This is what I think most men want, right? They want to be that solid guy where the woman, she looks to him with those little twinkles in her eyes and she knows that she can rely on him with herself, with her emotions mostly, right? That if she gives them to him, he's not going to just put them on the floor or just kick them under the carpet, that they will be supported, that they will be nurtured. And through that, what I've noticed, and I can say this just in my current relationship, that I can become a conduit for her emotional grounding. I don't know if you've ever done like a sport or something like that, and you've done this sport with people that are better than you, right? Because I used to skateboard and I would always skate with guys who were far better than me. This actually gave me the confidence. Like it grounded me. If I was around guys who sucked, then there's no challenge or anything like that. There's no support because we're all just a bunch of numbskulls. But there's guys who know what they're doing and they can give pointers. They can settle you mentally, show you what to do, and it makes you better. And I think in a similar sense that I've noticed in my own relationship is that I'm turning into this conduit for her own emotional grounding. And I've seen development that within, say, like a few months, that would take standard Western therapy years. And that's the power that a man can have when he's grounded. She's
Exactly.
looking to him like, holy, this is the guy.
But he has to be really comfortable with his emotions as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because women are such emotional creatures. We can only meet someone's emotions as deeply as we met our own. So, women being very emotional beings, if you haven't dealt with your emotions as a man, it can feel very overwhelming. You can
Oh,
feel attacked or defensive and almost run away because you're approaching the relationship from the wounded inner child, the wounded little boy is there. And then all of a sudden you're feeling like, oh, this is reminding me of when my mom was upset with me and angry, and I don't want to deal with that. And then runs
yep.
instead of
That's
really
scary.
hold space, yes,
Yep.
and you get that a lot because, unfortunately, a lot of men have been wounded through childhood because and they don't know they wanna have these relationships, but they've never been taught to have that emotional intelligence or how to deal with their emotions because they were just taught, "Big boys don't cry. If you're gonna cry, I'll give you something to cry about." You've been just taught as boys, they're conditioned and programmed to disconnect from their emotions. So it's, okay, now I want a relationship, and when women want really deep intimacy, they're craving also an emotional connection. And if that is something that you've never been familiar with, that you don't even know how to navigate, then that's really scary. And the male will shut down. And then that starts to create like a division between the two because then
Yes.
she's not going to feel safe as well. I'm
Mhm.
curious, what do you see whenever you're working with men that have this mother wound or and how that impacts their relationships? What has been your experience in seeing this? And
Guys
what
with the mother wound, oh, there's so much. The mother wound, it comes out in so many different ways. A lot of times there's fear, like what you were talking about. There's fear of a woman's emotions for sure. And something that I help guys cultivate is what I call the mountain mind. And the mountain is not moved by anything. There can be hurricanes, storms, earthquakes, like whatever. The mountain is just staying there. And it's still, right? It's calm. The mountain is chill. And so this is what I help guys develop. But to your question, there's fear, there's anxiety, there's sadness, there's anger. And a lot of times it's all wrapped up into one in varying degrees of each little pillar, right? And it can be quite messy, right? I've worked with some guys with upbringings like you would not believe, like super abusive mothers, like Harry Potter getting locked under the stairs in a cabinet for hours on end, right? All sorts of stuff like that. Drug users, alcohol abusers, all sorts of things. And of course, this doesn't really, because of what you're talking about, this disconnection from your past, from your emotional experience, right? I wouldn't say the emotional experience, there's a disconnection from that because it's safe, right? It's like, well, okay, yeah, I can ruminate about the past, about what my mother did to me, but what's that going to do, right? How's that going to help me do things in the world? And to the point, it won't, but that's not the point. The point is, what's that going to do to you in your inner world, right? Not with your career, not with your family, not with your endeavors, right? It's about what's this going to do with yourself. And unfortunately, they're not going to come to an understanding of why that's important until they reach another point of crisis where they get to this point of breaking and going, fuck, there's something I need to do. There's something going on inside that's fucked up that I need to address. And it's really not until that point that they're ready to start examining these things. But until then, that wound of sadness, the anger, it develops into neediness or it turns into true misogyny, right? Having a strong disdain for women. And this plays out in their interpersonal relationships with women. And so they're either like pushing or pulling. I mentioned this before. It's like, I'm not into this push pull. It's just two faces of the same coin. And I'm saying just let go of the coin altogether. Stop pushing, stop pulling, and start accepting things as they are. This is when you start on the journey to actually start connecting with women. But to your point, like you have to start connecting with yourself. And that is accepting the terrible things that might have happened to you. That is accepting your anger. That is accepting your pain and your fears and all the crap that you would rather not pay attention to, right? And just start ignoring that shadow and just, no, go back there. That's not helpful. It's not going to help me with my career, right? It might not, right? But this is keeping you disconnected from yourself. It's giving you terrible relationships. It's making you super needy. It's making you super angry when you don't get those needy things satisfied. And frankly, it just doesn't turn women on, like, at all. It's funny because it's like when you're not needy, The guys will think I have to do these things, right? I have to go do extra because, or when you're needy, they feel like I have to do extra. And they're always calling her, always giving her stuff, always making sure that the flame is stoked. Because if I don't stoke that flame, she's going to lose interest. The funny thing is, and then they look at the bad boy and they're like, but wait a second, he doesn't pay attention to her at all. And she's obsessed with him. And that's because there are certain little traits that the bad boy has that the man has, but they're just little strands. They're not really the embodiment of a man. And part of that is the lack of neediness, that I don't need you. I'm not going to chase after you. I'm not grasping at you. The bad side of the bad boy is that he's not grasping, but he's actually pushing away. And he's saying, I don't need you, but with a chip on his shoulder. And then that triggers the girl's wound. And she's, what's wrong with me? Let me prove it to you that I'm worth your time. Let me prove it to you that I'm worth your attention. And so you've got a lot of wounded people triggering each other all over the place. It's really bizarre.
Yes. If 95% of us received inadequate parenting, we're operating from these wounds, and relationships are just a mirror reflecting back to us the relationship we have within ourselves. So if we want our relationships to improve, it's all again about that relationship to self. And for me, whenever I started changing my relationship to myself through Tantra, all my relationships improved with coworkers, with friends, with family. I attracted better lovers. Everything across the board improved. And also with Tantra, a lot of my clients start making more money because how you show up in the bedroom is how you show up in the boardroom, is how you show up in the Zoom room. And you are going to be in more of a confident energy. Now, the bad boy, a woman that's attracted to bad boys is still in the wounded feminine.
Of course.
A woman that has been on her healing journey and has resourced herself isn't going to be attracted to the bad boys anymore either. The part of the bad boy that is appealing, again, like you said, is the fact that they're not having a needy energy and they're not trying to control. And so it can feel safer to be around a bad boy that isn't going to try to control us, maybe be physically abusive to us. I've had relationships where I've had to get restraining orders and
Mhm.
to get someone to leave me alone, and they're not going to be in an unhealthy obsession with me. So in those instances, do I want someone that might even be a threat to my being and my livelihood, or do I want to deal with a bad boy? Okay, a bad boy would probably be a better choice.
Possibly. It depends because that could end up you having a lot of emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that I've surmised that the bad boy and the nice guy are just two sides of the same coin. And just at some point in their past, there was a split in the road. It's all in an effort to avoid pain. So the nice guy, he split off and figured out, okay, if I do all these extra things, then I'll get the love that I want and prevent rejection as much as possible. Okay. The bad boy splits off and says, I'm going to distance myself from women in order to protect myself as much as possible. It's a
Reject the
fear.
other before, so I don't have to worry about them rejecting me. So I'm going to be the bad boy and I will reject them. Then
Or keep them at a distance
yeah.
and in the many ways, physically, emotionally, verbally. So they're both pathways of avoiding fear and pain. And the only thing is that it's just the nice guy is noticeably distasteful. But the funny thing is, you look at them on the surface, and I'm sure you've been around or been with nice guys or guys with nice guy syndrome, let's just say that. And on paper, you'd be like, but there's no reason to reject him. He takes care of himself. He wants to take care of me. He's well employed. He does this. All on paper, he's, wow, for all intents and purposes, I should be attracted to him. But like you were saying, women are very intuitive. And there's something in there where your intuition's, girl, he's not it. There's something
He
wrong
doesn't
with
feel
this guy.
safe.
This isn't natural, right? This doesn't feel like a man. This doesn't feel like a oak tree. And so it's I can't deal with that. And the bad boy, it's like, obviously he's bad. It's clear, you
You know
know?
what you're getting yourself.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So it's almost better to get with the bad boy because you're like, all right, I know he's going to treat me like dirt. I know he's only going to call me when he wants to fuck. And I might only see him once or twice. And then that'll be the end of it. So there can be some acceptance there. It's like easier to deal with the villain who presents them as a villain versus the
there's
nice guy who, I'm not a villain. I'm really nice. I'm good. And it's the fuck you are. You got demons just like everybody else.
We all do, but this is the authenticity piece because the bad
Right.
boy is authentically being bad. They're not trying to act like they're anything different than that. They're
Mhm.
like, this is me and I could care less. And this is my attitude. Take it or leave it.
Sure.
But the other part of the when someone's trying to play Mr. Nice Guy, and women, we do this too with people pleasing, it's that inauthenticity. I'm also a recovering people pleaser. And I didn't realize till later that people pleasing is actually a form of manipulation.
Of course. Yeah.
So then it is this inauthenticity piece where, okay, are they truly this way or they're just presenting this way? And there's something here like evil lurks behind this that I don't know about. Plus, again, rather pick the evil that we know than what is this person? This person is hiding something from me. And that feels scarier. Neither of them are good for us.
I think that you've probably recognized this in one of your past lives, but it's what you're describing. I notice very blatantly when dealing with submissives, certain types of submissives. And one of the traits that I've recognized that is somewhat common is a large amount of self rejection. And this plays right into their submissiveness. And I learned, I was like, at first, I was like, oh, this is just a very submissive woman. She just really wants that acceptance and that approval and things like that. And then over time, I realized that this was really a full on rejection of self. And the cup was empty, it was like dust in there. And they're so desperately looking for someone to acknowledge and put stuff in, right? And I learned early on as a dom that this was actually quite draining, right? Because their cup had holes in the bottom. So I
Yes.
put in and it just drained right out. Wait a second. Why isn't internally she moving forward? And it was because it was just constant rejection of the self. And there's really nothing that I could do, right? Maybe if there were no holes, I could do something. But there was holes, and those holes can only be patched by the self. There was nothing, as I could be the best man on the planet, and it would not cure, it would not heal her. And I love healing. I love watching the light bulbs turn on for people. But if someone is self-sabotaging or they're not bothering to help themselves, then you just end up wasting time. Like that type of person, I noticed a lot. It's like very apparent with submissives. So I'm working with some guys they're doms in training, that sort of thing. They're learning about this world and they're coming across some very submissive women. And I'm like, you watch out because they're going to want to just give to you their entire self, their entire will immediately, right? Without a second thought, in desperation. And I'm like, sure, your dommy side self is going to want to just sink your teeth into that and have a lot of fun. Okay. And you probably will have a lot of physical fun, but it won't go anywhere. You'll constantly be adding in and because she's constantly depleted and it's going to drain you. So that's for anyone watching this who's into the lifestyle. Just be aware as doms of a thing commonly known as sub frenzy and that ultra willingness right away. That's not a sign of a good sub. That's a sign of a very hurt person who desperately needs healing, but you can't really do anything about it. And likely your interactions are going to make it worse.
It's an energy, and you got to pay attention. We're all energetic beings, and people are either energetically a faucet or a drain. So some people, they're the drains. No matter how much energy you can pour or share their way, they're constantly draining your life force energy and your energy, and they never able to, pour back into you or have something where you're sharing and having this even exchange of give and take. And it's just always taking and taking. A lot of times also very victim mindset. And for many years also while I was working as a nurse at USC as a travel nurse, I was also a pro dom in Los Angeles for
Mhm.
many years.
We're going to get into that when you're on my show.
I could sense and see the pain that people were having.
Right.
And my mentor as a dom, she had been a dom for over 26 years, and I'm all into helping and inspiring people to heal themselves. So I had asked her, I said, well, at the end of the session, is it okay for me to say like some words of affirmation or kindness to them? And she's, no, you'll ruin it for them. Don't do that.
Oh,
I was like, oh, wow. Okay. My true nature is
someone who
bring
heals, who helps.
yes,
Sure.
yes.
It's an interesting question of like, where's the line drawn between brokenness and kink? Because there can be severe crossover. There's very much healthy kink and there's very much unhealthy kink that is disguised as kink, but it's really like some up shit going on, right? And I've seen both sides, right? So it's a gray area. I was actually in a clubhouse a couple nights ago, and it was a smaller room, so I had the opportunity to talk, and people asked me questions about what I do. And this one guy, he was really honestly like just trying to learn like just about being a dom and what it takes and all that stuff. He said, if there's one thing that you'd say that a dom must need, what would that be? And I said, the ability to pay attention, because in order to truly pay attention to stuff, you have to separate yourself a little bit. You have to distance yourself so that you can clearly observe what's happening. And I think this is what prevents you from getting into trouble. This is what allows you to look at somebody and go, is there some going on here that we need to talk about first before we get to playing? Is playing even beneficial here? Or is it going to just be furthering and enabling more symptoms and more syndromes? Is playing actually going to be harmful? But in the short term, it seems like it's not. Right. And so I think that paying attention is actually one of the best, most important skills that a Dom must have, and that's part of being a leader, part of being that container. The symphony conductor hears the music, but he's not listening to it, not in the same way that the audience is, right? The audience, they can just completely immerse themselves and lose themselves in the music. He doesn't have that privilege because there's so many people counting on him. All the musicians are looking to him for cues of what to do, how long, how strong, how quiet, and all this stuff so that everyone else can have a great experience that they paid for. So he doesn't have that privilege. He hears it, he loves it, right? Or else he wouldn't be doing what he's doing, but he cannot be immersed.
Yes, definitely. One thing though is whenever it comes to tantric lovemaking and intimacy, that's where men need to have a different viewpoint on it, because if they are having a distance in a way and being too
Right.
observant and having the
It doesn't work.
interaction
Yeah.
action be where they're analyzing and looking at things and they can't immerse themselves fully into it, then they're missing a really amazing and deeply healing experience.
Yes, I've written a book on how to be a fantastic lover. And while this isn't the same as Tantra, I am a big fan of fantasy role play and things of that nature. And so immersion is one of the key aspects to being a good lover. There's four key aspects, and one of them is immersion. And so in order to experience and enjoy immersion, you can set up playtime that is reflective of that. Say like a tantric play session. Maybe neither of you know about Tantra, but you're getting into this idea of this is going to be a more meditative, more energetic experience that the two of us are going to enjoy equally, or some sort of like spa meditation session, whatever. You create your whole environment to support this, and it becomes this lived in fantasy where you're creating this pocket where you as a man can immerse themselves and get lost in that scene. I don't practice Tantra. It's been something of interest of mine. And I think it would be really cool to get certified. But aside from that, it is healthy to immerse yourself. And in order to do that, you have to create things, right? In order.
Your intentionality. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
If I appreciate you taking the time to share with me today, and for everyone here
Absolutely.
listening too, how can everyone find you?
If anybody wants to connect with me, they can write me an email, justin@thedominanceacademy.com. If you want to check out the things that I produce, such as my books, my coaching, and any information on that, that can be found at thedominanceacademy.com. And I'm also on YouTube and under the same moniker. So that's where you can hear me talk live on various topics. A lot of it is around general relationship stuff. There's some dominance things in there, but for that sort of content, it's just not YouTube friendly. I don't want to censor myself because it's a disservice to the information.
Agree. Thank you for being here. I look forward to having another conversation with you in the near future.
Yeah,
Thanks for your
definitely.
time.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Blessing everyone.